Film censorship is a topic that isn't thrown around too much nowadays, but Professor Steve Masick of North Central College is looking to bring it back into discussion with his new book about the Chicago Film Censor Board. Steve is a media historian who just happened to stumble across the existence of this very board.
I stumbled across this article from 1967, which was about how the police had raided the Aardvark Theater, which was this tiny little art theater on Wells Street, to seize a copy of Andy Warhol's Chelsea Girls. And I was like, and they did it on the authority of the Chicago Film Censor Board. And I'm like, wait a minute, there's a Chicago Film Censor Board in 1967? What's going on with that? And so I had to start investigating, and I started reading all the newspaper articles I could about. There was not very much written in the scholarly literature about the existence of the Chicago Film Censor Board, and I started looking into it, and what I learned was Chicago was the first city in the United States to have film censorship. It adopted the first censorship ordinance in 1907, and it also had the longest lasting local film censorship. It lasted until 1984.
This board has a long history with tons of films that were banned, but why were they banned? I asked Steve, and he lays out some of the popular reasons.
Basically, that meant they could ban a film because they thought it was racist. They could ban a film because they thought it was offensive to a particular religious group, or especially to clergy.
Another of the popular reasons to ban a film was that the film would cast the police in a negative light.
So they banned a whole bunch of films that were gangster films that were set in Chicago. One probably the most famous example was they banned the film Scarface, the original Paul Mooney Scarface, which is, if you've ever seen the film, it's basically about an Al Capone type character and his rise to power.
With such a long history, the board needed support, and Steve has found that the censor board had two main supporters. The first,
it was supported by the mayor's office.
Yeah, this guy, Richard J. Daley, and I bet you can guess why he liked the censor board so much.
But I think they also liked the power, like Daley, like the power that it gave him to control the kinds of films that were shown in the city.
The second supporter came from one of the most powerful institutions in the city and in many cities around America, none other than
the Catholic Church.
Yup, the Catholic Church, but they supplied a very specific kind of person. Steve calls them...
I call them the old biddies.
Here's a brief description of what Steve calls an old biddy.
Prominent church-going women, grandmothers, widows of Chicago police officers, or police women, religiously devout and prudish.
Steve is in the process of writing the book, and he's still doing some more research, and he is hoping for a release of the book in 2018.